All right, hello. Okay, so we're covering circulatory system and respiratory system today. So, okay, the circulatory and respiratory systems, okay, together, they work to provide the body with oxygen, but more importantly, they also get rid of CO2. Okay, you cannot have too much CO2 in the body. Too much CO2 in the body is going to be a poison, and it can actually kill you. And then on top of that, your body needs oxygen. So you need to transfer, get more oxygen into the body, and get carbon dioxide out of the body. Okay. Okay. So the key components. Okay. Blood. Blood actually travels through the circulatory system. Okay. So you have a big heart. That heart is the pump. Okay. That heart is the pump. The blood vessels then carry the blood to the respiratory system where it exchanges the gas. So out CO2 in oxygen, and then you bring the blood to the tissue where there's actually gas exchange. Okay. The blood is also connected to other systems as well. Um, in addition to transporting oxygen, it also transports nutrients. So it has to go to the digestive tract, pick up the nutrients to take them to the rest of the cells. It picks up the waste from those cells and takes it to the kidneys where it's filtered out. Okay. In addition, you guys learned earlier, hormones always use blood to travel through, and therefore the hormones all travel through the blood to get to where they need to go. Okay. Okay. Blood is composed of two major components. Okay, about half of it, a little bit more than half, is plasma. Okay, plasma is a liquid. Okay, that's mostly water, but has other proteins and salts and other stuff dissolved in it. Okay, and then you have something called form elements or just cells and cell fragments. Of that, most of that is red blood cells. Okay. The red blood cells are the only cells in the body that express hemoglobin, and they produce a huge amount of hemoglobin. Okay, inside a red blood cell is about 98% hemoglobin. Okay, so the red blood cells originate from stem cells and red bone marrow. Okay, as they mature, they lose up all their organelles, especially the nucleus, and they basically become a sack of hemoglobin. Okay. Okay. White blood cells, okay, are part of the immune system. They help fight off invaders. Okay. Last but not least, platelets. Platelets are small cell fragments that initiate blood clotting. Basically, they form the initial clump, okay, that prevents you from losing too much blood. Okay. And then on top of that, they attract blood clotting factors, okay, that eventually seal the leak. Okay. Okay. So here is what all the blood does. Okay. Okay. Question one. So make sure you're able to do this. Okay, because this will show up on your exam. Okay. So okay. Okay, so this is biology, so not just humans, but other things have a circulatory system as well. Okay, So some animals, such as flatworms and cnidarians, don't have a circulatory system. They have to be very thin. If they're very thin, then they can exchange air and gas directly with the environment, and therefore you don't need a circulatory system. Okay. Okay. Some circulatory systems are open. Open circulatory system has open blood vessels. So they leak out and they leak back in, and they leak out and they leak back in. And so this is open. Okay. And then what we have is a closed circulatory system that contained mostly within blood vessels. Some of it leaks out and stuff, but most of it stays within blood vessels. Okay. Okay. Some vertebrates have a two-chamber heart. Some have a three-chamber heart. Birds and mammals have the most complicated one. They have a four-chamber heart. Uh, okay. Make sure you know the difference between open and closed circulatory system, and in those animals that don't have a circulatory system. Okay. So here are the major arteries and major veins, but you don't need to know them. Okay. Okay. So the plasma cells and platelets make up blood circulate through the body through elaborate system of blood vessels, and in anatomy and other classes you get more and more detail about what these blood vessels are. Okay, but you do have to know what these terms actually mean. Okay, arteries and arterioles carry blood away from the heart. Arteries are bigger, arterioles are smaller. Okay. Veins and venules carry blood back to the heart. Veins are bigger, venules are smaller. Okay. And then we have the capillaries. The capillaries are the tiniest little blood vessels. You can see they barely fit one cell going through at one time. These capillaries are where the magic actually happens. Okay. It's where the gas exchange happens. Okay. Okay. So. Okay. So all those, make sure you understand why this is the only one that's true. Okay. The heart is a muscular pump. Actually, when I explain anatomy, I like to explain there's two pumps, one on the right side and one on the left side. Okay. So you have two atria. The two atria receive the blood from the veins. Okay. Atria is the receiving chambers of the heart. And then the ventricles actually pump the blood into the arteries. Okay. Okay. On the right side of the heart, the right side of the heart receives blood from the body and pumps it to the lungs. The left side receives blood from the lungs and pumps it to the body. Okay. The heart, because it's a thick wall of muscle, they need their own blood supply. Okay. And that blood supply comes off the coronary arteries. Okay. And I'm sure most of you have heard of coronary artery, and you heard of things like coronary bypass and stuff like that. Coronary arteries, the blockage of coronary artery is the most common cause of a heart attack. Okay. 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 Blood gets oxygen from the lungs, so the oxygen for blood enters the right atrium it gets pumped right out of through the right ventricle to the lungs and comes back via the pulmonary veins. Okay, and then the oxygen-rich blood enters the left atrium and is sent through the aorta. The aorta is the largest blood vessel, the largest artery in the body, and then the blood circulates through the body before returning to the right ventricle. Okay. Okay. So your heart, okay, is going to contract and pump. It doesn't do that just by itself. It needs a signal to start pumping. That signal is starting from the SA node. The SA node is also known as the pacemaker. Okay, the pacemaker, okay, is in the upper right wall. So the right atrium starts to contract first, and so the right and left atrium almost simultaneously contract together, and they push the blood down into the ventricles. The AV node then causes the ventricles to contract up, and they contract up and shoot the blood up. Okay. Okay. I'm sure you guys are used to hearing this, but heart sound. 1, 2, rest. 1, 2, rest. That's the sound of your heart. Okay. What your heartbeat is not the sound of your heart beating, actually. It's the sound of the valves closing. Okay. When your heart valves close, they prevent backflow, and that prevention of backflow is what makes the sound. Okay. 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 So, okay. The amount of blood pumped out per minute is called cardiac output. Okay. And it's determined by heart rate and the strength of the heart. So you need to maintain a cardiac output. So if your heart is stronger, then you can pump out more blood, okay, with each stroke, and therefore you can pump less times. Okay, if your heart is weaker, then you need to pump out more times to maintain the level of blood. Okay. 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 So arteries have a thick layer of smooth muscle. Okay. Okay. The I'm missing one thing. Okay. So make sure you know what this answer is. Describe the path of blood as it enters through the chamber. Make sure you know how to do that. Okay, so now let's look at the arteries and veins. Arteries are close to the heart. They absorb shock from the heart. So the pressure is very high in the arteries. So the arteries need a thicker wall to help pump blood. Okay, they help absorb the shock. Okay. Arterioles, since they're smaller, have a much smaller layer of blood vessels. Capillaries are only one layer thick to allow for gas exchange. Veins have a thinner layer of blood vessels, okay, because they have lower blood pressure. Okay. Okay. Because they have thin layers, the veins collapse when empty, and so the valves keep the blood flowing backwards in the veins. The skeletal muscle contraction pumps and propels the blood through the valves through the horn of heart. Okay. So blood pressure. Okay. Blood pressure is the force the blood exerts on vessel walls, and it can be measured using a sphygmomanometer, or otherwise known as a blood pressure cuff. Okay. Okay. So blood pressure, there's two units for blood pressure, and that's systole and diastole. The systole is the higher blood pressure, the diastole is the lower blood pressure. The higher blood pressure is when arteries in the pressure in the arteries when the ventricles contract. The lower blood pressure is the pressure in the arteries when the ventricles relax. Okay. Okay, so the blood has the highest pressure in the arteries and then followed by capillaries and veins. Okay. Okay, so okay. We control blood pressure using pressure receptors. Okay. Okay, so we can actually vasodilate or vasoconstrict our blood vessels. When we vasodilate, okay, that lowers the blood pressure. When we vasoconstrict, we increase the blood pressure. Okay, when we change this, we can drive the blood to where you need blood the most. Like if you're running for your life, then you need blood to go to your legs so you can run. You don't need blood to go to your stomach at that time. So the vasodilation will occur in the legs, and vasoconstriction will occur in the stomach. Okay. Okay. Gas exchange. Okay. Uh, gas exchange. Um, Gases can be exchanged across body surfaces via tubules connected to the atmosphere, like grasshoppers do, or across gills or lungs, like fish and mammals. Okay. The respiratory surfaces are where external respiration occurs. Okay, so in all cases, you need a large surface area so you can exchange gases quickly. It needs to be in contact with the outside world, so in contact with the air or water, and it needs to be wet. Okay, because that helps diffusion a lot. Okay, the human respiratory system is a continuous network of tubules that deliver oxygen to the circulatory system and unload CO2 into the lungs. Okay, so okay. Breathing starts in the upper respiratory system. So you breathe through your nose, okay, and the mouth, and passes through to the pharynx, and then ultimately um, into the lower respiratory system. Okay. But the upper respiratory system, in addition to just breathing, produces a bunch of mucus. The mucus allows all the bacteria and dust and dander to stick to the mucus instead of going to the lungs. That stuff going to the lungs can cause infections very quickly. Okay, so when you breathe, okay, you want to generate turbulence and stuff like that. So um, that bacteria and stuff is trapped against your uh, mucus instead of inside your lungs. Okay. Okay. Once it enters your lungs, okay, so it enters your lungs, the trachea splits into two bronchi. The bronchi splits and splits. And then last but not least, the autonomic nervous system controls the contractions to adjust airflow. So if I want to take deep breaths, I can take deep breaths. If I want to take shallow breaths, I can take shallow breaths and stuff like that. So, okay. Okay, so the way we breathe, and this has everything to do with pressure. Okay, so air always flows from high pressure to low pressure. Okay, not just air, but everything that flows, all fluids go from high pressure to low pressure. So when we want something to flow in, we need to lower the pressure in that environment. And so when we breathe in, okay, we open up our lungs. When we open up our lungs, that decreases the pressure in our lungs, and that causes air to go in. When we breathe out, we contract our diaphragm, and that contracts our lungs, and that increases pressure in our lungs, and that changes airflow out. Okay. All right. Okay. The ventilators basically do the same thing as we do. Okay, they just um, force the air in. Okay. Okay. So air flows through the mouth, through the trachea, to the bronchi, to the bronchioles, and to the alveoli. Okay, gas exchange occurs at the alveoli. So let's take a look. I don't know why. Oh, I must have skipped the slide. Okay, sorry about that. An alveoli is a tiny, tiny sac. You have like a million alveoli in your body. Okay, the alveoli is a tiny, tiny sac of epithelial tissue that is exactly one cell layer thick. Okay, the thinner it is, the better. So one is as thin as you can get. So this allows for ventilation. So gas can transfer in and out. So oxygen travels from the alveoli into the bloodstream. Carbon dioxide travels from the bloodstream into the alveoli. Okay. 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 Well, I explained this already, but oxygen and CO2 travel in different directions. Okay. Blood carries oxygen and CO2 in different ways. Okay. Uh, hemoglobin always binds to O2. Okay. All for all intents and purposes, all the O2 in your body, I know this is slightly not true, but for you guys it's true. All the O2 is travels in hemoglobin. Okay. And carbon dioxide, some of it travels attached to hemoglobin. Most of it does not. Most of it is transferred into bicarbonate. The bicarbonate actually travels out of the cell into back into blood plasma and travels into blood plasma. Okay. Okay. So there are two steps. So CO2 plus H2O goes into carbonic acid. Carbonic acid releases a hydrogen ion. So when you have CO2 in your blood, you also have hydrogen ions. Hydrogen ions make your blood more acidic. When your blood is too acidic, that means your body knows there's too much CO2. When there's too much, when your blood gets too acidic, it causes you to breathe more. When you breathe more, you get rid of CO2, and that changes your body back to normal. Okay. Okay. And that's it.